been frozen out.
Facing an extinction level event.
We don't fight this fight right now. You're not going to have black-owned media. Now, y'all know, of course, we have been focused on this whole issue of black-owned media and what is happening in this country and how black-owned media is being frozen out of the advertising dollars. Well, we told you the other day where Byron Allen and others, including myself, signed a letter that was published in the Detroit Free Press. It also was published, a full-page letter in the Wall Street Journal and other papers, highly criticizing General Motors for their refusal to meet, the CEO, to meet with black-owned media CEOs. That led to a meeting on Monday with the chief marketing officer for General Motors. We were supposed to have a meeting today with the CEO of General Motors, Mary Barra. Yet last night, they canceled that meeting. Why did they cancel that meeting? Because we ran that particular ad in the Wall Street Journal. They also said that our numbers were wrong and there was other faulty information. We said, fine, provide us with the actual numbers. They said, no, we can't do that for competitive reasons. Really? That's strange. So we've been making the case that, look, if we're talking about this whole issue of black-owned media, and if you're General Motors and you're getting 11.4% of the dollars that black people, market share, African Americans are buying 11.4% of the cars from General Motors. They sell 7.7 million annually. So right now, they went from 1% to 2%. Now they announced today that they're actually going to do 4% by 2022. And in the announcement, what they also said, I'm going to pull it up on Ad Age for you. They also announced that by 2025, they'll be doing 8%. Interesting. This is the headline right here, folks, in Ad Age. If y'all could go to my iPad, that'd be great. I want to show this. GM says it will increase spending on black-owned media. The automaker said it plans to dedicate 4% of its advertising budget to black-owned media by 2022 and 8% by 2025. Interesting. Joining me right now is Todd Brown. Todd was one of the signatories of that particular that ad. Todd has HBCU pass. He, of course, was a group publisher at Ebony. Also, was a top exec at the Griot and Comcast as well. So let's deal with this, Todd. So here's what's interesting. Here we're done. Now all of a sudden, we had this meeting on Monday. You were on the call. I was on the call. Byron Allen was on the call. Butch Graves from Black Enterprise, Junior Bridgman, who bought Ebony, was on the call. We're all on the call. And General Motors tells us, hey, we doubled our spend. Okay? You doubled the spend from 1% to 2%. Now they're announcing we're going to go to 4%. And by 2025, we're going to go to 8%. Why in the hell can't you go to 8 now? Todd, your thoughts?
Yes, interesting, Roland. I think the big thing is a conversation about a numerator and a denominator. So if you believe what is published in the same magazine that they ran the headline in, the number at the macro levels feels like 3 billion. And we have canvassed and talked, and unfortunately, we can put our hands on 99, 95% of black-owned media. And the numbers we come up with are far below 0.5%. And as you say, we represent 11.4% of their buy-in. So if you start to play the game of doubling small numbers, you can have 100% growth year on year of a small number and still not be to a full 1% of what we think their spend is. 1% is 30 million. What we see is closer to 10% of that. So the notion that we're fostering here, and what's key is, and I think what people should understand, is General Motors represents a reality of black-owned media, that it's on its way to being extinct, that it's largely not invested in, and then we're positioned to fight over scarcity, which is crumbs. And I think the idea that they now are using the terminology black-owned media, they're also using the terminology 4 and 8%. I think those things are good, but we have to get the math and we have to have transparency. Otherwise, let's be blunt. I was running Ebony and Jet as a group publisher when Jet was sunsetted. I was at Ebony when we were in a position where we could not afford to run the ads, when indeed we got ads, at the prices which were up to 80% versus our competitive set, and the volume was 70-80% versus our competitive set. And Roland, what that really means is I can't afford to print the magazine, I can't afford to pay writers, I can't afford to pay my publisher, I can't afford to pay mail. So at the end of the day, the conversation about $1.7 trillion potentially of spend coming from black people happens to mirror in a very interesting way with $170 billion of advertising per year, which in 10 years, ironically, Roland, is $1.7 trillion. So we're asking for our pool to increase from 100 million and in a very macro way around black owned to a number that starts to look like 2 to 3 to 4 billion, with a goal toward getting to 10 billion of the overall spend, which gives an ecosystem. And that's what I'm excited about. It's not just a 7, it's everyone in black media on the ownership side is suffering from this scarcity model. So when we start to get economy, it all boats rise, if that's clear.
So for everybody who's watching, so let me just, I want to lay the groundwork for you so you can understand why we ain't playing games. 1990, the first job in media where I got paid a check was at the Houston Defender. In 1992, I'm working for the Austin American Statesman. I go to the Fort Worth Star-Telegram in 1993. I'm writing columns for the Houston Defender at the same time. In 1995, I leave the Fort Worth Star-Telegram and I go to KKDA Radio, black targeted radio station. Top radio station on the AM side, on K104, tops on the FM side. Then 1999, 98, I'm writing for the Dallas Examiner, black-owned newspaper. 1999, I start writing for, and I become the managing editor of the Dallas Weekly. 1998, black-owned newspaper. In 97, Dallas Examiner. 1999, I become managing editor of the Houston Defender, black-owned newspaper. 2001, lead top editor at blackamericaweb.com, owned by Tom Joyner, black-owned. 2004, take over the Chicago Defender, later become general manager, black-owned. Did some work in 2000 for Major Broadcasting Cable Network, black-owned cable network. Of course, joined TV One in 2005, black-owned. Okay, Vanguard Media, news editor, Savoy Magazine, black-owned. I'm laying all that out because I've done black-owned in newspaper, radio, television, digital, all the platforms. And Todd, the reality has been the same. Black-owned media has gotten 20 cents on the dollar, has been left begging, has not gotten fair share of political advertising dollars, dollars from major corporations all across the board, pharmaceuticals, take the category. And so what we're doing by calling these people out, what we're simply saying to folks that what y'all have been doing, matter of fact, I'm going to let Denzel ask Malcolm X speak for us. This right here, y'all, is really the position that we're taking.
Break it up. You got what you wanted.
No, I'm not satisfied.
That's it. No, we're not satisfied. General Motors, with this announcement right here that y'all have made, we're still not satisfied with 4%.
Roland, what I would say to you is that when we don't control our means of communicating our issues because we can't afford to, then somebody else is going to define us. We have to tie group economics as a collective to the amount of spend and impact we have on the economy, and we have to call on that spend as an opportunity for equity when it comes to our fair share of the marketplace, which we, by and large, drive in the news cycle, the entertainment cycle, the sports cycle. And then, frankly, Roland, what really angers me is that we don't get a chance to experiment at all. You can see new mediums come up like Refinery 29. I was at Viacom when we launched a logo channel. They can experiment and get a forward investment into those mediums, and then they get a chance to build. We get a chance to die, and we're on a survival capital, and it just doesn't work. So we have to have this conversation, or I promise you, we're going to be in a similar fate to most of our Black-owned newspapers, what we're seeing in the magazine business. And by the way, Roland, it's not just that they didn't keep up with technology. They couldn't afford to invest in technology. Last thing, you and I always talk about this. If I could afford to put $10 million into an idea for talk radio and the party line, we could own a $2 billion franchise today called Clubhouse, which is largely excitable by Black voices. This is why we have to do this, because we have to create a space for ourselves, and we have to create a space for our children.
And I want everybody to understand what we face when we go to these ad agencies and companies who then demand, what are your numbers? Prove to us that you can deliver an audience. Go to my iPad. Quibi, y'all, announced Shortform Media. They announced that they were launching this app. They raised $1.75 billion. Jeffrey Katzenberg, of course, the former CEO of eBay. Y'all, no, go back, please, go back. They raised $1.75 billion. Y'all, they lasted 6 months before they went out of business. Now, what y'all don't realize is they had guarantees. They locked up millions of dollars in advertising. Y'all, they had no proof of their model. So, Todd, what's crazy is there's no way these same ad agencies and these companies would give me or you 2 and 3 and 4 and 500 million in advertising up front for a product that could not prove its concept.
Exactly. The math only works, Roland, when it's a hammer. And I've seen this with major corporations in CPG. I've seen it with most people that were advertising in the books I was running with Ebony and Jet. Every time we're below the threshold or can't afford to pay the auditor on the rate-based audits, then we are penalized where we end up owing a make good that pretty much puts us out of business. And I see forward investment for years into Facebook until they figure out what their ad model is.
In fact, hold on, Todd. Here's a paragraph. Y'all, please, go to my iPad. Look at this right here. Quibi booked $150 million in advertising, selling out its first full year of inventory months ahead of launch. Now,
so Roland, are you saying they were invited to an upfront and someone bet on their potential? That sounds like what you're saying.
Yes. And here's what I know. I know for a fact that it took TV One 12 years. I need everybody listening to me right now. It took TV One 12 years to hit $100 million in revenue. Quibi booked $150 million in revenue before they opened on day one.
And oh, by the way, Roland, that's advertising and subscriptions in the TV One number. So that's 2 models. The other thing I would say that with Quibi, if I'm not mistaken, Meg Whitman was one of the key principals. She just became a board member at General Motors.
See, and again, the reason we're spending this amount of time on this for everybody who's watching is because y'all need to understand when y'all say, well, why can't y'all do this? Why can't y'all go here? Why can't we have this? If you don't have the money to do it, you can't do those things. The reason you do not see a daily national Black newspaper is because of this. Is because major companies, what they do is, they say, oh yeah, you white? You upstart? Oh, we're gonna bet on your prior success. We're just gonna lavish you with
I'm
money.
betting on your potential. Roland, I was at Ebony and Jet as a group publisher. We could not afford to have a White House correspondent. We never got invited to the correspondent's dinner. I could not afford to have a reporter from Ebony and Jet on the Air Force One. All those monies come from investment through advertising and subscriptions. And the largest part of that, because subscriptions was really driven in order to drive the rate, was advertising. And when we were locked out systemically from that, therefore, there's no chance to expand onto other mediums, to experiment, and to deliver value and even credibility around the stories we could cover, which again, all driven through the consumerism of our people and never coming back to the group economics that impacts our ability to build a better life for our children and our community.
See, what folk don't get, what people don't get is, and again, this ain't just General Motors. This
Amen.
is every single one of these companies. Todd, explain to people how much is spent annually in advertising in the United States by the very company that black people buy products from.
The notion of the math is clear. $170 billion is being spent, and $100 million is going toward black owned, not black targeted. Because, oh, by the way, Roland, if you're black targeted, you can be blackface on white media, and they could buy that as a surrogate for spending money with a platform that can tell our stories in an authentic way that comes from us, by us. So when you talk about $170 billion across the Fortune 500, you're talking about budgets from $500 million to $3 billion to $6.6 billion is the last number I read at Amazon. So you're talking about Facebook that's north of $4 to $5 billion. You're talking about major players that harvest black analytics, they harvest black consumption, they sell products to black people, and they do not invest or do business or create a commerce opportunity where blacks can participate. And systemically, and we keep using that term, Roland, it's set up that we cannot play. And that's why we're asking for a forward investment in the landmark of storytelling for the black community, because it's about to go extinct.
The thing that we were seeing is called, by choking off the advertising, you're choking off your future. Bottom line is this here, Todd. There's no media company that survives without advertising. None.
Roland, we'll be remiss if we didn't talk about the tactic of how do you break up a collective action. If we don't talk about the fact that folk are so hungry for survivability, and I was in a company that was on his lifeblood when I was an equity owner and CEO of the GRIA. We could not, with 6 million monthly average viewers, convince anyone that they should buy ads with us because they went with the tonnage of black aggregated white-owned mediums. And so if we don't have the ability to tell our story and to pay our bills, we're forced into extinction.
How about this, Todd? Hold on. I want you to explain, because the reason we're walking through all of this is because our people need to understand. You and I on the inside fighting this thing, and the people on the outside don't realize it. Tell folks what Ebony was charging for a full-page ad compared to magazines that were not as big as Ebony.
Well, when I got there, Jet, which by the way had an audited distribution of 800,000 in a slow month, 700,000. Esquire magazine had a 500,000 audited base. Their ad rate was close to $200,000. On average, Jet was getting $7,000 per ad, and we could not get 20% of the ad potential in that magazine. That means that you're getting less than 20 pages at 7,000. They're getting 50 to 60 pages in Esquire at 150 to 200,000 a page. The economics on that destroy you. So that's low volume and the lowest rate. Frankly, it was consistently 80% less. On Ebony, which was our big book, with 1.25 million audited, distributed content and readers and 10 million readership. Meaning, when you buy an Ebony, Roland, you don't just read it once. We pass it to the barbershop. So the readership was 10 million. And our book rate when I got there was closer to 25K. And I was able, after I got shut down, to get it to 60K a page. I got Apple to run in the book. And when they started running at that number, the advertising industry turned off the spigot. We couldn't get 30 pages at 50K. So that is a going out of business. And by the way, Lifebook's Vogue, Lifebook's Oprah Winfrey's magazine that was running in the Hearst infrastructure are getting in the hundreds to 200 a page. And they're getting the front and the back. So you're in a position, Roland, with the same kind. And by the way, blacks are the most impressionable, meaning that the ad that are sent to them, they actually take actions. We actually support the people that support us. And it was consistently impossible to get a reasonable rate.
Somebody named Beloved on YouTube said, how did O Magazine make money, just as you were mentioning it? And it's very clear. Folks, listen to me very clearly. Hearst owned O Magazine.
Almost 100 labels.
Hearst ran O Magazine. What we're trying to explain to y'all is the advertising industry and major companies has no problem paying full market rate for products that target black people.
Facts.
They don't like it. They will not pay full rates if it is black owned. Somebody did not listen to what I just said. If you have a
Roland,
black...
I lived it.
Right. If you get a black targeted publication, that's white ad agencies, white companies dealing with white sales exec, they'll pay the full rate. They will not pay the full rate if you're black owned. Go ahead.
Roland, I just wanted to say, this is not just about the modality. So that's just not the print and the magazine and the newspaper business. We had a robust digital business called the Griot. I sold it to Byron Allen, who is now invested heavily in making sure that that platform is available to tell our stories. So the reality of it is, even when we were able to get a clear density of an audience, most in the right demographic and female, I still could not get them to do a direct buy at any consistent rate for those eyeballs and impressions. So it's not just, oh, you're crying, trying to take us back 50 years into the print world. I'm talking about the digital world. No matter what the modality was, we faced the same extinction reality. That's why we're having this fight, Roland.
So for everybody who's listening, I want y'all to understand. Essence Magazine does not make money. 90% of the money is made from the Essence Festival. Black Enterprise. When the last time y'all seen a hard copy? When the last time have y'all seen a hard copy of Black Enterprise? A magazine of Black Enterprise? Been several years. Butch Graves told me point blank, Black Enterprise does not exist if they do not have conferences. That's why every time you turn around, there's a new email about a Black Enterprise Summit. That's the only way they even survive. They're not funding us. But
I'd like to add one more thing.
But hold up, but Todd, but if we were black targeted and white owned, and again, and y'all, I'm just walking y'all through the facts here. iHeartRadio launches Black Information Network. I have a commentary on it. That's black targeted, not black owned. They were able to sign up major advertisers before they even launched on day one. You have Spotify announces these new podcasts for blacks with Jamel Hill. Spotify not black owned. The Black News Channel, the Pakistani American, Shahid Khan, who owns Jacksonville Jaguars, he owns a majority of that. Black News Channel is not black owned. It's black targeted. Complex is considered to be the #1 digital brand to reach black consumers. Complex is owned by Hearst. Bounce TV is not black owned. They are black targeted. Also, I need y'all to stop saying that Magic Johnson owns Aspire. He does not. Aspire has been sold. Aspire, a black targeted network, is white owned. But they are able to go in and get significant dollars from companies by being black targeted and not black owned. So what I'm saying, Todd, and I've been saying is, everybody gets to monetize blackness and benefit from it except black people.
Well, Kierna Mayo, our former editor-in-chief, made a statement which I think resonates very well, Roland. And her statement was, everybody loves black culture, but not everybody loves black people. So if you can love my culture and be comfortable with me getting less than 0.5% of an opportunity to tell my own story, but you count on, and I like to say the phrase because it's true, blackface on white-owned media. That means, Roland, that if they are selling me to the general market, the rate works. If it's me selling, the scales are imbalanced. That's what this conversation is about. That's what this conversation is about.
Some of y'all are asking me, what about Revolt? Diddy owns that. They can't get the money, which means they can't grow. I told y'all pre-COVID, in Black America, there were 2.6 million black-owned businesses. 2.5 million of them had one employee. They were doing an average revenue of $54,000. That means out of all the black, so truth be told, we don't have 2.6 million black-owned businesses.
We don't.
Truth be told, we have 100,000.
So Roland, if you're black targeted and I have a good job, why are you so angry about black? Oh, you want equity and wealth and generational and community. So everybody is happy when one of us gets a great job. Stephen A. has a great job, but that does not improve or create wealth outside of what he controls, which is his immediate family. And I'm not picking on Stephen A. I'm proud that he has a platform to tell stories. But the fact is, if I'm black owned, I create the number of employees and opportunities, and I reimagine what an investment would look like in our community using our culture with our people. That's how we lift from a wealth gap of 700% for them and almost nothing for us.
Somebody said Vibe Magazine. Yes, Quincy Jones was a founder, but y'all, Eldridge Industries bought the company Spin Media. They're not black owned. The Root is not black owned. The Root is owned by a white private equity firm. Y'all, what I'm trying to get y'all to understand is
Roland?
that Black Voices is not black owned. Huffington Post owns Black Voices, which is now owned by BuzzFeed.
Sir, can I speak to a root cause issue?
Yep.
Less than 2% of African Americans are carrying a VP title in corporate America. So we're not getting hired and we're not matriculating and we're not getting to the decision point to actually allocate resources. I'm not talking about chief diversity officer. I'm not talking about community relations. I'm not talking about, respectfully, HR. I'm talking about P&L and decision making. So if we're not matriculating in these companies and we can't make decisions inside of them, and we don't have a supply chain equity conversation in the areas of our commerce cycle, then you're setting me up to continue the gap. I keep going back to the point. If there's no wealth to be poured into the bets on ourselves and we don't make any demands, we will continue to be eliminated from the marketplace. That is why we're fighting this fight.
Folks, Marjorie Donat just said this, Untied. I want you to answer this question. She said, most of us here in this chat room aren't in media or marketing. Good information, but I can't do much with it. She's wrong.
She's absolutely wrong. Because when we don't show up and start asking the question which you asked on an interview today, Roland, you asked the CEOs to answer the question, what is your black spin? What are you doing inside this company on hiring, on decision making, and you have the right, especially in this current climate, to ask that uncomfortable question. What is your strategy? What is your plan? And what are you doing, especially when we know that 1.3 trillion is being spent in this economy? It is the time to ask the question. Because, by the way, we believe that this same gap exists in other areas of acquisition, not just media, and other supply chain areas. But we're starting with what we control and the stories that we can tell, because when you fix media, you can then retell your story about the other stories. But if you don't have media rolling, somebody else will be telling your story.
So for the people who are watching, the people who are saying, you know, I can't do anything with this, this is what we're trying to get you to start doing. You're in organizations. You're actually buying products. You need to start asking the questions. Oh, said company, who I keep giving my money to, not only do I want to know, do you have blacks on your board of directors? Who are your black senior executives? And what is your black spend? Are you spending money with black advertising agencies? What is your marketing budget? How much of your marketing budget is going to black-owned companies? Do you have events where you cater? Are you using any black catering companies? Do you have transportation in your company? Are you using black transportation companies? What we're trying to do here, Todd, is to get our people, to start asking these questions up front before we make moves, and stop falling for the okie doke of companies telling us how much they are going to give in charity. For instance, General Motors had announced, and if I can find it, 1 second, y'all. I just want y'all to understand.
The foundation. They're going to bring the foundation and tell us what they're doing with their foundation.
I want y'all to understand.
Roland, one of the premises.
Here it is right here, y'all. I want y'all to understand. This is June 5th, 2020. This is June 5th, 2020. Let me see if I can switch. It's on my computer. This is June 5th, 2020, where you should be able to see it now. General Motors designates $10 million to support organizations which promote inclusion and racial justice. $1 million was going to go to the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund. Todd, based upon our research, General Motors was going to give more in social justice than black-owned media was actually getting in advertising.
Well, unfortunately, Roland, that approach to social diversity, equity, and inclusion statements and photo ops lack intent, they lack impact, and they lack investment. And when you're having a business-to-business conversation, only when it comes to black people do you have a conversation about foundations and advocacy. And I had this conversation in a public forum. No other interest group has their advocacy group as a competitor for their commerce transactions. I don't see it in any other group. I don't see it with GLAAD. I don't see it with the Jewish Defamation League. I don't see them competing for commerce transactions. They're truly fighting for advocacy. And when they get investment in their organizations, it's not as a substitute for a business transaction, which creates generational wealth and opportunities for that community. And we just got to be frank about it, Roland. We have to stop allowing advocates to act as business professionals when their job is to advocate, highlight, and represent our ability to tell our story. And then we have to do business to business with a clear ask.
So what we're talking about here, folks, and again, to set this whole thing up, we began the show. We were supposed to, Todd and I, along with Byron Allen and others, were supposed to be meeting today with General Motors to talk about spending. And let me tell you what the ask was. Because, see, I want y'all to understand. We were very clear. Matter of fact, Todd, so explain to everybody. So, okay, let me reset it. I just told y'all, go back to my computer. I just told y'all that on June 5th, 2020, General Motors announced that they were going to give $10 million to support organizations which promote which promote inclusion and racial justice. Based upon our research, and we've told General Motors, if we're wrong, present us the real information.
Show us.
That General Motors was spending less than that with black-owned media. So today, first of all, Todd, explain to people what we asked General Motors for.
Roland, we were very clear. We asked for a conversation with Mary, their CEO, to have a dialogue about what they're doing with their media spin on black-owned. And we wanted to begin a conversation so she could get to know us and we could get to know her, because we were excited that she's made some really wonderful statements. And we think her intent around wanting to make this happen is important. But we think it's important that we build a game plan with the principals who represent black-owned media. And once you do that, we can begin a dialogue about how to fix what we know is an economic gap between how much money we spend with them and how little business they do with us in the media space.
No, but explain to people what our ask was. We said
meeting.
We said 200 million a year for the
Let me
next.
explain that, Roland, because the conversation really immediately started around a goal as a percentage of spend. Since there was no clarity and no agreement on their side on what their spend is, even though Ad Age and others are pretty clear and been consistently clear about what they think their spend is, we said that what we need is a minimum of 200 million with a year with 5% escalators, and we need that for a 10-year time period.
So
Roland,
we were saying we want to sign a 10-year contract that minimum is $2 billion going to black-owned media companies. This is solely with General Motors. $2 billion over a 10-year period.
You have to contrast that. You have to contrast that with the total amount of spend in all of corporate America today on black-owned. It's $100 million, and we've allowed that to happen.
So for everybody listening, black-owned media gets $100 million annually out of what? The $170 billion they spend?
$170 billion. And so when we start to ask about, and Byron likes to say this, when we start putting water in the ocean, all boats now can float. Most of the boats are actually trying to sell on sand, if not have gotten out of the boat altogether. So the reality, Roland, when General Motors starts to spend, not to the level that we spend with them, 11.4, when they start to spend directionally with us, it changes the landscape of black-owned media materially, one company. And we do plan to have this conversation at least 1,000 more times.
So this is what folk don't need to understand. So this is what we're walking through. This is what we're trying to explain to get people to understand and why we're making the point. And so, again, I appreciate General Motors announcing that they will go to 4% by 2022. I am saying right now to General Motors, it is wholly unacceptable to get to 8% by 2025 when you can do it now. You do not have to wait 4 years to increase to 8%. You should be spending 8% right now.
So, Roland, if they spend 8%, you're saying they have another potentially $2.8 billion to keep doing what they do with ads and directional. So you're actually asking that they spend a couple $100 million out of $3 billion. So I just want it contextually, because sometimes as people of color and black people, we tend to get excited about numbers, but the wrong numbers. 200 million in one company, as opposed to us fighting and damn near killing each other over 1 to 10. Depends on who math you want to have. That's the problem, sir. That's the problem.
Now, again, last point here. I need people to listen to me very clearly, and I'm going to say this very slowly. African Americans account for 11.4% of all cars sold by GM annually. So what GM is saying is, Black-owned media, you were getting 1%. We went to 2%. Now we're pledging to go to 4% by next year. And by 2025, we'll get to 8%. So black people, you're 11.4%. 4 is right here. They're saying by year 4, we'll get to 8. That's still below the percentage of cars black folks buy every year. I'm sorry, General Motors, 8% by 2025 is completely unacceptable. We are not satisfied. Final point, Todd.
Roland, I've seen companies like Refinery 29 get investments of up to $450 million on a venture side, which has largely been closed to black folks, venture and private equity. I see those companies be worth and valued at $4 billion that have started 15 years ago that focus on a crowded marketplace called women. I've seen discrimination statements made by employees about how they felt about being treated in those ecosystems, specifically black women. And then I see us struggling to have a conversation to tell our stories and not getting any forward investment and frankly, recompense for the money that we put out to tell our stories. And here's the thing that people don't process, Roland. When you invest in black media, when you invest in black people, you get even a higher return in loyalty and creativity and brand connections, as opposed to having people who don't understand us try to tell our stories poorly. So this is really about fair play, equity, and the right thing to do at the right moment.
Todd Brown, we appreciate it. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, sir.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
It's time to be smart. When we control our institutions, we win. This is the most important news show on television of any racial background. Y'all put $2, $3, $4, $5, $10, $15, $20, $30 on this and keep this going. What you've done, Roland, since this crisis came out in full bloom. Anybody watching this, tell your friends. Go back and look at the last 2 weeks, especially of Roland Martin Unfiltered. I mean, hell, go back and look at the last 2 days. You've had sitting United States senators today, Klobuchar and Harris. Whatever you have that you can bring to Roland Martin Unfiltered to support it, please do, because this information may literally save your life.
Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered daily at 6 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope, or go to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered Daily Digital Show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. RolandMartinUnfiltered.com.